There is a place where becoming a man isn't about identity, it's about survival. Where a woman's body is a crime, her love is a death sentence, and the only way to escape poverty is to erase herself completely. The only way a woman can inherit her father's land, open a bank account, or even vote is to swear an oath, not just of celibacy, but to erase her entire identity as a woman, to cut her hair, bind her breasts, and live as a man for the rest of her life. This isn't a dystopian novel, it's happening right now, in the mountains of Albania. While Western feminists debate pronouns and workplace equality, here, women pay for basic rights with their bodies, their futures, and their very souls. This is the story of the Burrnesha, Albania's sworn virgins, and the brutal paradox of becoming free by surrendering everything that makes you human. What I discovered about this ancient tradition completely shattered everything I thought I knew about gender equality and women's rights. Because here's the shocking truth: sometimes the price of freedom is becoming someone else entirely. The tradition of sworn virgins dates back centuries, rooted in the Kanun, Albania's medieval code of honor that still governs life in remote mountain villages. In a society where blood feuds and tribal loyalty dictate everything, women are legally invisible, unable to own property, lead households, or even testify in court. They exist only as daughters, wives, or mothers, their worth measured entirely by their relationship to men. But the Kanun offers one brutal loophole that reveals just how desperate these circumstances really are. If a family has no male heirs, a daughter can take a vow of lifelong virginity and assume the social role of a man. Overnight, she gains the right to carry a weapon, negotiate business deals, and sit with men in village councils. She can drink rugge in taverns, smoke in public, and make decisions that affect entire families. But the cost is everything that makes her a woman. She must never marry, never bear children, and never, under penalty of death, let her female body betray her new identity. This isn't gender fluidity or personal choice as we understand it in the West. This is gender erasure driven by pure survival. Burrnesha don't transition because they want to explore their identity. They do it because the alternative is destitution, dishonor, or worse. In a culture where a woman's worth is tied entirely to her virginity and her ability to produce male heirs, becoming a man isn't liberation. It's the only way to stay alive and keep your family from losing everything. The numbers tell a story that honestly most of the world has never heard. 70% of Albania's arable land is inherited through male lineage only. Without a Burrnesha, families lose their ancestral homes, their livestock, and, well, their entire way of life. In the remote region of Shkoda, I learned about one family that actually forced 3 daughters to become sworn virgins just to keep their farm. The result? A male lineage that ends with them. No children, no grandchildren, no future generations to carry on the family name they sacrificed everything to preserve. This isn't about Albania alone. It's about the lies we tell ourselves about choice and freedom. In the West, we frame gender identity as liberation, as the right to be whoever you truly are inside. But what happens when choosing to be yourself means losing everything? What happens when the system is so broken that the only way out is to stop being you entirely? These women aren't free, they've simply traded one prison for another. And the most devastating part is that the system convinces them to be grateful for the trade. So I ask you, is freedom really freedom if it demands the annihilation of your soul? Is equality achieved when the price of basic rights is the complete erasure of who you are? We talk about male privilege as if it's a bonus, an unfair advantage that men receive simply by being born male. Here's the truth that will make you question everything you think you know about gender advantage. The moment a Burrnesha swears her oath, she signs a contract written in blood. She will be respected, but never loved. She will command authority, but never know intimacy. And if she ever dares to break the rules, her own family will kill her. This revelation hit me like a punch to the gut when I realized that male privilege in this context isn't privilege at all. It's a Faustian bargain that destroys the soul while elevating the social status. The women who become Burrnesha don't just gain men's rights, they lose every single aspect of human connection that makes life worth living. The Burrnesha's so-called privilege is a cruel illusion designed to make oppression look like opportunity. Yes, she can drink rugge in taverns without judgment from the community, but she'll also spend every night alone in a bed she's forbidden to share with another human being. She can own a car and drive anywhere she wants, but she'll never experience the simple joy of riding shotgun with a lover's hand on her knee during a sunset drive through the mountains. Her right to dance at her own wedding, to feel a baby's first kick in her womb, to nurse a child through the night, to grow old surrounded by grandchildren who carry pieces of her heart into the future. Every single milestone that gives life meaning is sacrificed on the altar of survival. And here's the most insidious part of this system. It depends entirely on the Burrnesha's silence about her sacrifice. If she admits loneliness, she admits that the trade wasn't worth it. If she expresses regret, she undermines the entire foundation of her family's survival strategy. So she leans into the performance with devastating commitment, cursing louder than the men, walking with more swagger, hardening her heart until even she forgets what she's lost in the process. The performance becomes so complete that many Burrnesha develop what psychologists call emotional numbing, the complete inability to access feelings that might betray their constructed identity. They don't just dress like men, they literally rewire their emotional responses to match what the community expects from someone with male social status. But the statistics reveal the hidden cost of this emotional amputation. In the remote region of Tropoje, Burrnesha deaths are often labeled as hunting accidents or farming mishaps. However, local NGOs that work with isolated communities estimate that 1 in 10 of these deaths are actually suicides. Women who simply couldn't bear the weight of living as someone they're not for one more day. The love trap reveals another layer of this psychological torture. Research shows that Burrnesha earn 30% less than biological men in the same roles, despite having identical legal rights. Their so-called privilege comes with its own glass ceiling because, deep down, everyone knows they're performing masculinity rather than embodying it naturally. They get respect, but not the full respect that comes with authentic male identity. This forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our own understanding of privilege and power. We think privilege is about getting more opportunities, more respect, more freedom. But sometimes privilege is actually about losing less. The Burrnesha's male privilege means she loses less property, less social status, less family honor, but she loses everything that makes existence meaningful. What would you sacrifice to be seen as fully human? Would you trade your right to love and be loved for the right to own property? Would you surrender your identity for respect? Would you choose survival over your soul? The Burrnesha tradition reveals that sometimes the systems we call privilege are actually just different forms of oppression. Male privilege in this context isn't freedom, it's a gilded cage that grants legal rights while destroying every human connection that makes those rights worth having. So tell me, is power still power if it robs you of everything that makes life worth living? Is privilege really privilege when the price is your entire authentic self? Here's where the story takes an even darker turn that will make you question everything about family, legacy, and what we're willing to sacrifice for tradition. The families that create Burrnesha to preserve their bloodline are actually destroying it in the most ironic way possible. They're creating male heirs who can never produce heirs of their own. Think about the mathematical impossibility of this system. A family forces their daughter to become a man to keep the family name alive, but that decision guarantees the family name dies with her. She gains the right to inherit property that she can never pass down to children she's forbidden to have. The very solution to their succession problem becomes the final chapter of their bloodline. But the families don't see it that way. They're trapped in a kind of cultural tunnel vision where keeping the land in the family name for one more generation feels like victory, even when that generation is the last. The immediate crisis of losing property to male relatives overshadows the long-term reality that they're trading temporary preservation for permanent extinction. I met with village elders who defended this practice with a logic that reveals how desperation can make self-destruction seem rational. Better to have a son for 20 years than lose everything immediately, one elder told me. At least the family keeps its honor. At least the land stays in our name until she dies. Until she dies. That phrase haunts me because it perfectly captures the fatalistic thinking that drives this tradition. These families aren't planning for a future, they're just delaying an inevitable ending. The Burrnesha becomes a human pause button on the family's extinction, not a solution to it. The psychological impact on the families themselves is devastating in ways that rarely get discussed. Mothers who force their daughters into this role experience a unique form of grief. They're mourning their living child while simultaneously celebrating their survival. They've saved their daughter from poverty but killed their dreams of grandchildren. They've preserved their family legacy by ensuring it ends. The fathers, when they're alive, to witness the transformation, often struggle with guilt that manifests in strange ways. They become overprotective of their Burrnesha daughters, constantly worried that someone will discover the deception or that their daughter will break under the pressure. But they also become dependent on them in ways that would be impossible with biological sons, creating a twisted parent-child dynamic where traditional gender roles are completely inverted. Brothers and male cousins who benefit from this arrangement often develop complicated relationships with their Burrnesha family members. They gain inheritance rights they wouldn't have had, but they also carry the knowledge that their advantage comes from their sister's sacrifice. Some become fiercely protective, others become resentful of the attention and respect their brother receives for what they see as playing dress-up, defy individual destruction. Villages that depend on these families for economic stability or political leadership develop a vested interest in maintaining the illusion. Everyone knows the truth, but everyone also benefits from pretending not to know. The conspiracy of silence becomes a community project. But here's the detail that will keep you awake at night. Many Burrnesha outlive their immediate families, inheriting property that has no one left to inherit it from them. They become the sole owners of ancestral lands that will eventually be sold to strangers or claimed by the state. The legacy they sacrificed everything to preserve dies in a government office when the last sworn virgin signs her final will. Some of these women in their final years try to reverse their decisions. They attempt to reclaim their female identity, to find some kind of love or companionship before death, but by then their bodies have been permanently altered by decades of binding and testosterone-suppressing herbs. Their voices can't return to female ranges. Their social skills with potential partners are non-existent. They're trapped in a masculine presentation that no longer serves any purpose but has become impossible to escape. The most tragic cases involve Burrnesha, who try to adopt children in their old age, desperate to create some kind of family legacy before they die. But Albanian adoption laws don't recognize their unique situation. Officially male but biologically female, officially celibate but socially masculine, they exist in a legal limbo that prevents them from accessing the very family structures they sacrifice their lives to preserve. What does this tell us about the stories we tell ourselves about sacrifice and nobility? How many other traditions around the world ask individuals to destroy themselves for the supposed good of the group? How often do we mistake short-term survival strategies for long-term solutions? The bloodline paradox of the Burrnesha tradition is ultimately a mirror reflecting our own cultural blind spots. We all participate in systems that ask people to sacrifice parts of themselves for larger goals, but how often do we examine whether those goals are actually achieved by the sacrifice? Is preserving tradition worth it if the tradition destroys the people it's meant to protect? Is saving the family name meaningful if there's no family left to carry it? There's a statistic that Albanian officials don't want you to know, a number so disturbing that it's buried in unmarked graves across the northern mountains. But once you understand what's really happening to these women, you'll never look at the concept of honor the same way again. When a Burrnesha commits suicide, her family doesn't just lose a daughter or sister. They lose their inheritance protector, their economic security, and their social status all at once. The land that she died to preserve often ends up lost anyway because there's no one left to maintain the male presence that the system requires. Some families, faced with this reality, make decisions that reveal just how desperate and irrational the entire system has become. They pressure younger female relatives to take over their Burrnesha role, creating multi-generational chains of sacrifice. I learned about one family where grandmother, mother and daughter all lived as men simultaneously, creating a household of 3 people pretending to be something they're not, while slowly destroying each other psychologically. The children in these communities grow up witnessing this cycle of sacrifice and suicide, often without understanding what they're really seeing. They learn that love is less important than property, that identity is negotiable, and that family honor requires individual destruction. The psychological damage doesn't stop with the Burrnesha. It gets passed down through generations as a toxic inheritance. Mental health resources in these remote regions are virtually non-existent, but even if they were available, seeking help would be seen as admitting weakness, which would undermine the masculine performance that keeps the whole system functioning. The Burrnesha are trapped in a psychological prison with no possibility of escape, no one to talk to, and no way to ask for help without destroying everything they've sacrificed to build. Perhaps most tragically, many of these women die, believing that their sacrifice was meaningful, that their families are better off because of their decision. They never realize that the system that demanded their identity also made their death inevitable. They die thinking they failed, when really the system failed them. The suicide secret of Albania's sworn virgins forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the traditions we celebrate and the prices we're willing to let others pay for our cultural heritage. How many other honor systems around the world are quietly killing the people they claim to protect? How many sacrifices do we romanticize without examining their real human cost? When tradition requires people to choose between authenticity and survival, and then punishes them for making either choice, what does that say about the value system itself? Is any tradition worth preserving if it systematically destroys the people who are supposed to benefit from it? And if we know the real cost, but choose to look away, what does that make us? Remember, wherever life takes you, home isn't just a place, it's a perspective. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Your curiosity makes these stories possible, so keep exploring, keep dreaming, and we'll see you in the next adventure right here on Beyond Borders.